Hi everyone, my name's Kristen. I also go by Ms.Filmingo, and thanks for clicking on this video. Today I'm happy to share my exclusive interview with Nicholas Ma, who is the director behind the film Mabel, which is currently available to view on digital, or you can check it out right now in New York, showing at the Cinema Village Theater. Nicholas had previously appeared on my channel when we discussed Leap of Faith, but I'm so happy he's back to discuss his wonderful coming of age story. But before we jump into my interview, let me give you all a brief synopsis about Mabel. No one gets Callie, an awkward preteen whose one friend Mabel is a plant. As Callie's obsession grows, she is put at odds with her mother and jeopardizes her first chance at a real friendship. Now that you know a little bit about the film, let's cut over to my interview with Nicholas. Why did you want to tell this very sweet and endearing coming of age story?
I think there's sort of two things that were coming into my head at the same time. One is, um, you know, my husband and I were preparing to start a family, and I have all of these, children in my life from friends, etc. And I just was like, what are the movies that I used to watch as a kid that I loved, and are those movies being made now?
Mm-hmm.
I remember, growing up watching movies like Sound of Music or Mary Poppins, and they're these like delightful, amazing, beautiful little movies, and then you watch them as an adult, and you're like, "Whoa, Mary Poppins is about capitalism? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on here?" I had no idea. What is this about bank runs and, feeding birds? And so I just thought to myself, there is a space for movies that are sort of beautiful and heartwarming and charming and sort of fill you with all the feelings, and also as you get older, still have something to offer, right? About how
Yeah.
hard it is to be a parent, how hard it is to be a neighbor, how hard it is to be a teacher, how hard it is to sort of look at the world and feel okay with it. And, when it seems to be sort of going off the rails in so many ways. And so for me, that was one thing. And then the second thing is simple, which is just I read an article in the New Yorker. I fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, I have to make a movie about a girl whose best friend is a plant. So it's one of
Yeah.
those sort of crazy moments where you're just like, I see her in my head and I see her holding the plant and it just has to happen. And so I think maybe those two things came together and resulted in this movie. But it's also one of those things. Who knows? Who knows? Um I'm so grateful that I can share it with people now.
Definitely. So getting into the casting, because casting, I'm sure, was so critical for finding the right girl to play Callie. Lexi Perkle was incredible here. Was so talented. What was it like working with Lexi?
I mean, she was like a co-creator, It's one of those things where we had worked with some amazing Avi Kaufman in casting, and she has always had a nose for how to make great casting decisions. I think she did the casting for Succession, right? Like,
Oh wow.
talk about casting brilliance. And she gave me the advice saying, you will meet the right young person for the role
Hmm.
and then the role will become them. They won't become the role, and you just have to sort of know that and lean into what this young person has to offer. Where are they in their lives? And then
Hmm.
let that infuse into the film. And I feel like both Lexi and Lena um, created these characters that aren't who they are in real life, but
Hmm.
are projections of who they are in real life onto a screen. And I just feel so grateful. I mean, Lexi is just a remarkable young woman, was a remarkable person to work with during the film. And I'm just so grateful to her.
Yeah, and of course you also have the incredible Judy Greer. I mean, who isn't a fan of Judy Greer? I mean, I love the fact she does really great in like family-centered films. And then she has her horror side. Of course, I'm a horror fan, so I gotta ask, what was it like bringing her onto the project? Because I even loved the scenes where she was Lex. It really found it like she found her mentor and love seeing the scenes together. What was it like bringing Judy on?
You know, there are those people who, whether they're on screen or in the room, have this kind of like fierce light that burns inside of them. And Judy's just one of those people. And
Hmm.
I think I felt so grateful to have her there because it's this, she embodied that quality that's just so transfixing for Callie, right? This teacher that
Hmm.
she's just obsessed with, how can I spend more time with her? And she brings a kind of sensitivity and curiosity to everything that she does. And so she made me think more deeply about a story that, Joy and I had written and I was directing and, and all of a sudden Judy's there asking questions. And I'm like, that's a really good question. So I just feel so grateful for that. And she's um, just um, such a wonderful presence for the kids too.
Yeah. So getting back into the character of Callie, did Lexi have like a green thumb? Was she into plants or did she have to do a little research? I'm sure like you guys have, knowing all these different trees and plants. Can you discuss a little bit about that?
I think I would not say that Lexi had a green thumb coming into this. Um, and I think that was sort of a constant joke between the two of us that she's like, "How am I supposed to touch a leaf?" And I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
But I think what we all have at that age are these curious interests that feel like they're just ours, like
Hmm.
that are just sort of these niches where we find ourself.
Right.
I remember, when really early on during the casting process, it's like, but what do you think about when it comes to, movies and stuff like that? And Lexi's like, I love The Walking Dead. Like, okay, okay.
Okay, girl.
Not what I expected from, and but I think, it was a similar kind of just Spitfire, like this is my thing. I know all about The Walking Dead, and we read a scene together from The Walking Dead, which was
Oh,
a
that's
weird
too
thing to do,
funny.
but like there's it's that's I think there's something really wonderful about the kind of determination that we have at that age to be like, this is my thing. It's anime, it's dinosaurs, it's plants, it's
Hmm.
The Walking Dead, whatever it is. And I love that quality in you.
Now, getting into the part that I really connected with the most was Callie wanting to make a friend. I think
Mhm.
that was the part I saw a little bit of myself in Callie because I'm sure all of us in life struggled at that age to find friends. So, getting into that part, what were some of the themes were coming to your mind when writing the script?
No, I think a lot about how there is this push-pull between Callie's mom, played by the incredible Christine Koh,
Hmm.
and Miss G, played by Judy Greer. And there is this sort of adult contest going on of like, how's Callie going to figure things out?
Hmm.
And I think there is this sense of like real almost hopelessness, despair on all of their parts that this isn't getting better. This isn't getting better.
Hmm.
And it's this reminder also that friendship is hard, but it's sometimes easier than we think.
Hmm.
It can be as easy as sort of just walking across a yard. It can be as easy as allowing ourselves to believe that things can go wrong and they can get fixed,
Right,
right?
right.
I think we're living in a moment right now, and I think everyone lives in that moment when they're 12, where if something goes wrong, it's the end of the world,
Oh,
right? It's like,
absolutely.
right? It's like, oh
Worlds
my
come
God, I got a
crashing
stain on my
down.
favorite
Yep.
sweatshirt, like
Embarrassed
what? Yeah.
myself in front of the teacher in the class. Yep. Life's ruined. I felt that way countless times.
Right? And it's so visceral. It feels so you want to yell at any adult who says like it's going to be fine, whatever. You're like, you don't understand, this is the end of the world. And I think what's interesting is we actually have those moments as adults too, where our imagination gets just a little bit too small when we think to
Oh,
ourselves,
yeah.
um, no, I'm never going to get along with Uncle Rick, and that's just don't make me come to Thanksgiving if he's going to
Yeah.
be there, or like whatever it
Totally.
is, and I think that what I love about the the way that sort of Judy brings Miss G into the world is, not such an easy person, maybe not such a not a Miss Honey from Matilda
Oh,
character,
definitely not.
but someone who still can offer a little bit of wisdom that can remind us that whatever seems terrible or difficult in this moment, the world is so much bigger and there's so much more space for you in it than you might realize. And I think that's really beautiful.
Oh, that is really beautiful. Now, one other thing I also wanted to get into was the cinematography. You get some really strong, crazy close-ups of like, the plants that we see in the film, especially where we see the one with the fly being eaten by the plant and then the spinach. Can you talk about capturing those shots, but also capturing the landscape and that you're at?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. It's sort of like the cinematic equivalent of what we were talking about, right? That
Hmm.
we live in this very human-sized world and we forget that there is this amazing stuff happening that you have to really zoom in to see, or this amazing stuff happening that you have to really zoom out to see. And
Right.
so part of what Mark and I wanted to do in the cinematography was to balance those things, to remind us that there are these perspectives that we don't see. Here's a different way of looking at a house. Here's a different way of looking at a forest. Here's a different way of looking at a plant. We had to collaborate with some great scientists to get some of that stuff. I remember we were, calling up the lab that had originally done that spinach experiment and saying, "So could you like do that again for a spinach leaf?" And all these things. But I think, what's wonderful is scientists, botanists, are so delighted in their own subject matter, and to realize that other people are delighting in it too was sort of a thrill, and so it was
Yeah,
sort of a really
definitely.
happy collaboration around those fronts. I will say, watching a fly get eaten by a plant is a vivid thing to see. So
After, directing, a narrative piece and your documentary pieces, is there a medium that you like more, the documentary side or the narrative side, or do you have an appreciation for both?
I really love both. I think I love the same sort of philosophical questions in both, which is like how, they're really both movies are about how hard it is to be neighbors to each other, right?
Yeah.
Leap of Faith is, how hard it is to be neighbors if your pastor's in Grand Rapids, and, Mabel is how hard is it to be neighbors if you're a 12-year-old who really loves plants, and so I think that interested in the same topics, but to me they sort of they offer opposite gifts,
Right.
right? In a documentary, the gift is that it's real, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
all the weirdness is there, but you never get to see inside someone's head. You don't get to know. I don't get to totally know what's inside your head, Kristen, or you in
Mm-hmm.
mine. Whereas in a scripted film, we get to live really in those moments. We get to live in those really private, intimate moments and see them. But the challenge is you have to make sure that the strange feels credible and believable, because it isn't real in the same way. And so I love being able to bounce between the two of them, and I think they inform each other a lot.
Well, speaking of which, I have to ask, what are you working on next? Are you allowed to talk about what you're working on now, or is it
I'm working
hush?
on two things. One is I'm just starting to write a script about a fossil hunter, and
Oh,
I don't have much more to say about it than that.
yeah.
But it's exciting, and I think it sort of speaks to the same kind of sort of wacky things that I love. And the second is I've been, I've really been interested in something that Fred Rogers used to say. He would always say his favorite moment in his program was the conversation that happened after the television was turned off, what
Oh,
happened
yeah.
between families. And I think about that with Mabel. I think about that with Leap of Faith. And we've started hosting these like festivals of music, poetry, and hope around the country that we're calling American Revivals. And they're these really beautiful moments we've done them in Montgomery and in Cape Cod and Tennessee, and each one of them is this sort of beautiful reminder that as 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 our loneliness, our rage, our despair, our sadness, all of these things that make us feel like we're really going at it solo in the world. It's actually feelings that all of us share right now.
Hmm.
We may have them for different reasons or have different feelings about how they should be solved, but when we can see each other in the same room, right? It's why I think it
Hmm.
matters to go to see movies in theaters, right? If we can see each other in the same room and realize we've just witnessed the same piece of music, the same talk, the same poem, um, we realize that, and we've had the same reaction, we realize that there is something really special about that. These little revivals that we're doing, no one is this, each one is different, and each one is the only time they'll ever be done. And there's something beautiful about a live event too. So maybe I guess when I think about documentary and scripted film, I would throw live event in there as a third category of something where there's something about the fact that it's ephemeral, that, it happens and it's gone, but it's also something that forever links you to those people. Like you probably think about this. It's like, oh, were you at that concert? And I grew up
Yeah.
in Boston, like in Foxwoods. Were you at that concert? In Foxborough? Were you there? It's like, yeah, I was there. I was there. Oh my God. And so even if you don't even know the person, you feel like you share this incredible thing.
Oh, yeah,
What an
1000%.
amazing.
That's going to wrap up my interview with Nicholas. Make sure you check out Mabel right now on digital or in New York, showing at the Cinema Village Theater. This also concludes today's video, so please comment, like, and share. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so I can bring you more interviews like this, and follow me on social media. The links are provided down below. I'll see you all next time, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!